That's exactly what Beyonce feels. Thank you.
Is it like that every morning walking into Atrium? Is it just people cheering or screaming or
They're screaming.
getting angry?
They're screaming.
They're getting
No, I'm just kidding. We have a fun time. Lauren's over there for my team. Give her a round of applause. She can tell you what a joy it is to work at Atrium, and if you're looking for a job, we're hiring. So there's that.
Well, really grateful for you being here. And you've done StartGrind a number of times, and so appreciate you continuing to come back. I actually want to start with Atrium, and I have so many questions about so many things, but you're doing yet another company. Tell us, let's go with the YC route here. What is it and what problem are you solving?
Sure, yeah. Well, we're just going to get the plug right out of the way in the beginning, and then we can get to the deeper stuff. Atrium is a full-service corporate law firm for startups. So it came out of my experience as what I call an involuntary power user of corporate legal. I'd started a bunch of companies, paid legal teams and legal firms a lot. I'd done all sorts of, every part of my entrepreneurial journey was, always involved paying lawyers something. So like whether I was raising money or doing an M&A or whatever. And so there were some things I really liked from that experience. I really loved having experts that I could rely on who were drawing on their deep expertise. And then there were a lot of things I didn't really like. I felt like it was very opaque. They used almost no software for delivering the service in an efficient and transparent manner. Pricing was like very unpredictable. And so Atrium is our attempt to fix all of those kind of from the founder's perspective.
I think that traditionally people might have said, I don't know, maybe you could tell us, like, why hasn't anybody disrupted this before? Is there a reason for it? Is there a reason, like, you're able to do it now that you weren't able to do it in the past?
Yeah, so there's actually a bunch of different reasons. I don't know how technical you want to get, but basically there's regulatory capture around delivery service in legal. So if you're not there's very few law firm startups because if you're not a lawyer, you can't own a law firm. And so you have to provide, all the capital has to come from like the partners of the law firm. And usually when people are rich enough to actually start a firm, they're already like kind of at the top of their firm and they have very little incentive to change things. And so for us, we kind of created this 2-company structure where we have a startup that builds software and provides services to a law firm that kind of maintains all the legal regulations and ethical obligations that the lawyers have to clients.
Just raise your hands. Who's had a good experience with a lawyer? Raise your hand.
You can be honest.
Who's had a bad experience with a lawyer? Raise your hand.
It's about 50-50.
It's about 50-50. Yeah, I mean, are there specific problems to start with? I'm sure you're not attacking the entire spectrum of every possible thing you can do in legal, or maybe you are, but are there specific problems that you said, like, we're going to solve these first really well? And
yeah, so we started off for doing corporate transactional work. That's like financings and issuing equity employees, stuff like that for early stage companies, like seed, Series A, Series B, a few Series C companies, but really venture-backed startups or companies that are, aspiring to be venture-backed startups. And so really that's the sweet spot. We focus on the work and needs that they have. And we figure if we make it work really well for those companies, we can eventually go on to expand to different practice areas of law.
And you actually hire lawyers from like the big firms, right? I mean,
that's right. So for the Atrium LLP, the law firm, we hire for lawyers from all sorts of different firms: Cooley, Wilson Sonsini, many different ones.
And why? Like, as a lawyer? I'm sure I don't know that there's a lot of lawyers here that are looking for jobs, but just curious, like, why would they come work at Atrium versus going to work, staying at one of those firms? Like, why are those people leaving what is probably a very secure and comfortable long-hour job?
Yeah, so you could just take Atrium out of the equation and ask, why do lawyers? If you guys went, you live here, you might know some attorneys who are corporate attorneys, and the attrition rate is super high, even though the pay is quite good and there is stability and security. And I think that's because a lot of the existing incumbent culture is very, I would say it's a fear-based culture, and it's a very stressful place to work. There's relatively little guidance in a lot of ways. It's not entrepreneurial at all. If you feel like there's a better way to do things, you're not encouraged to innovate. In fact, the exact opposite. And so I think people are looking for something different, or a certain type of attorneys are, and we're trying to make an environment that's much more based on collaboration and love, where people feel like they can have ownership over how they do their work and deliver their work. There's more innovation in delivery services and how, what software you use, but all the way to just what are best practices, and you can get better over time. And I think there's some segment of people who want that.
What is success in this company? What does it look like for you personally? Like at what point, or is there a point, or just like you've done so many different things, but so like is selling it tomorrow, is that success? Is it selling at a certain point, or like what, or is it something about the team? Like what is it that personally would you say like Atrium has been successful?
Yeah, so I think we talked a little bit about that. We had a really good conversation a week ago and touched on some of this. And for me, I would say I started off with the idea that I just wanted to create another company that was bigger than Twitch, and I'd finally be happy if I did that. And so when I started off, I was like 2 years. This is 2 years ago. We just hit our 2-year anniversary in June. I really wanted to start a big company, and I felt like this was a big problem. There was a lot of money spent, so I could create a big company. And interestingly enough, through the journey, I've kind of reframed or refocused what success is, and or relearned, I guess. For me, I realized that kind of chasing these external goals and milestones was not actually changing anything in my life, and it made me really reevaluate what do I want out of this company and life in general. And so for me, it was this journey of self-discovery where I really realized I wanted to figure out what kind of place I want to work at, and then build a company that I want to show up to work at every day, where people are, it's a great place to work, where people are collaborative, they're empathetic, and they're self-motivated. And that's my primary goal and metric for success now.
Do you think the other companies that you started or worked in, did they have those sort of attributes, or is it different?
I think there were some that, the culture, if you're not intentional about the culture that you create in your company, then it just gets set based on your behavior and the behavior of the other early employees and executives. And so I think there were some in other companies, there were some good things. I think we had, maybe indexed high on responsibility and motivation, but there were a lot of bad things. I think they were very fear-driven in many ways. And so at Atrium, my primary motivation is to be intentional about the culture and really build a great place to work. And I think that the success will follow from that. That's my theory anyways. We're running the test live.
What's interesting about how you say where you're saying if I just build a company bigger than Twitch, then I'll be happy. I mean, for people, you mean it, you really did feel that way, right? I mean, you're a pretty genuine person.
That's not a joke.
It's not a joke, and you're being real about it. And I think it's for somebody that's not in that situation, it's sort of comical, because it almost is unbelievable, because it's like, how could you that's it, you did it, and you've made it to that point where basically anyone starting a company would dream to get to that point, and the 0.0001% of founders. And so, but it's this idea that the grass is always greener somewhere else, right? Or but it's just weird to hear you say that, because probably a lot of people would love to be in your situation. Or literally, I had someone that we were standing over on the side say, "I want to be you," which was sort of weird. I don't know how often you get that, but literally, I want to switch places with you. But you're saying that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you get to that point. There's still something more if you don't sort of find something inside.
Yeah, absolutely. The everything's relative. There's this. The human brain can create a torture machine out of any scenario, and you can always look at, there's someone out there, no matter who you are, who's doing better than you. They're more successful at a younger age, and they're better looking, and they're, better, whatever. They have a hotter spouse, or they're a better DJ, or whatever. I don't know.
They have a better shaped head.
They have a better shaped head. They have a full head of hair.
It's not cool, dude.
That sounds sorry.
No one knew until you said that.
So and you there's always these people out there's always going to be something you can compare yourself to, or it might not even be like a real person. It might just be some like idealized thing that set of milestones that you have for yourself. And I have countless friends who are more successful than me that are also they were torturing themselves and beating themselves up because they're not Mark Zuckerberg or something like that, right? And so it is really real, and it exists at every stage of success. And whenever if you're on that hedonic treadmill of trying to accomplish more and more and thinking it's going to bring you happiness, what will happen is you might achieve your goals, and then you'll just find that there's this new, more daunting set of goals waiting for you to torture yourself over in the next phase of your life.
Yeah, it's a good insight that the human brain can create a torture machine. I think, are some people just naturally supposed to be more happy than other people? Like, it seems like some people are just generally more optimistic, or is this like a skill that you can learn? Like, what have you learned about that?
Yeah, so I used to think it was like you get your draw, whatever you genetically ended up with, or through your environment when you're growing up, and that's how happy you are. And what I realized was like happiness and mental wellness are much more like working out. It's something that you don't go to the gym and work out one day and then you think you're supposed to be fit, right? Like, it's about a practice and doing things repeatedly. And I think about it like a bucket. I have all this set of daily practices that I do. Every time I do one, I'm adding a drop to the bucket, and then after like 10,000 drops, I've got a full bucket, and I'm like pretty good. But that metaphor really made me believe in kind of working on these daily practices to help me build like a much more happy and healthy life, I think.
What is happiness to you?
Yeah, well, so I mean, the things I do, I can talk about that. That's maybe more a little concrete. It's like I started, and this all came because I was super stressed out about this new startup about 18 months ago. I was it'd been 6 months. The first 3 months, of course, I was like, man, I'm so good at this. I'm crushing it. It's like easy this time. And then reality set in, and it was like horrible, of course. There's always more things that I felt like I wasn't doing good enough. And then I was super stressed, and I was like, well, that's not sustainable. And so it was weird to me because, like you said, it's like I could fall back on a lot of success I'd already had and not have to worry about it. So it wasn't really like, life or death for me to be successful at this company. But I was confused as to why I was so stressed. And I decided to start doing, I started doing these things almost skeptically at first to try to make myself feel better. So those were like things like a daily meditation practice, a gratitude journal, exercise every day, diet, just trying to like cultivate non-attachment, really, really holding in my heart that like if I get something that I think I want today, tomorrow it's not going to matter. I'm not going to remember it. And through doing those things regularly, I've been able to become much more consistently at peace throughout the day, which is good for me.
Yeah, probably your wife.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good for the people around me too. I think I'm a much better leader because of it, and I think I'm a much better friend and partner. Yeah.
So, journal of gratitude, writing in it 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, just things you're grateful for.
3 things you're grateful for. I use this app called 5 Minute Journal. They should pay me because I'm plugging this thing all over the place. But it's like, it's called 5 Minute Journal. Takes 5 minutes. Everybody's got 5 minutes, and it's just like, what are 3 things you're grateful for? What are 3 things you're going to do to make today great? And then positive affirmations.
Do you counterbalance that with the Journal of Rage app, or do you just do the positive?
I do the positive. I also do some negative visualization. So really trying to hold, like, what are the worst case scenarios.
Yeah, what is that? Tell people what that is.
Just thinking about, like, what are the worst case scenarios that could happen? So, like, what if this company failed? Like, what would that be like? And trying to visualize what that would be like in my life. What if, I got sick and, couldn't work? Just trying to visualize all these different scenarios so that what it does is when you wake up in your real life context, you're like, oh my God, it's amazing. First of all, like these aren't happening. And I think it's also like a little bit of preparedness, mental preparedness for when bad things do happen to you, which they will happen no matter who you are. You can be super rich and like bad things are still going to happen. Every human being will experience 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows in their life, right? Buddha said that, and I really believe it. You're going to experience them throughout your day, joys and sorrows. And you can struggle against it or you can accept it, but they're going to happen nonetheless. And so just being prepared to accept it is much more peaceful.
One thing that I've read about that you do is that you basically like shut down your phone in certain scenarios. Can you talk about what you do? I think you have a password on the App Store that you don't know about. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was super addicted to my phone, and I spent.
Would anybody say that they're addicted to their phone in this room?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet like that's only a quarter of the people who are actually addicted. But I was looking at my screen time. Like the phone was like it's a Skinner box, right? You get all these notifications, and they're telling you to like do shit on Instagram or whatever, and it doesn't really provide. Well, for me, I found it didn't provide very much actual utility. And we have like the kind of fake play notifications, like the Instagrams and Twitters and Twitches. And then there's this like fake work notifications like, oh, I need to be on Slack and I need to get all my email in real time. And I just decided to delete all the apps off my phone. Well, first I looked at screen time and it was like 5.5 hours a day. So that's a lot. 5.5 hours a day is a 37.5 hour work week on my phone. And so that was like 7 months ago. No, that was in December of last year, so 9 months ago. And so I just deleted all the apps, all the entertainment apps anyways, and all the work apps and the browser, because I would use that as a backdoor to like go to Twitter. And I locked it so I couldn't install apps, and I turned it to black and white mode. So it's like, I think it's less addictive when it's not in color. And now I don't use my phone anymore. And you know what? My life is like way better. So, yeah.
So again, like from where you sit today in the company that you're in and where you've gotten, this like seems really smart, and I can see how you can pull it off. It's hard for me to see like the first day at YC and like to come in and Jessica, Michael's like, hey, okay, so the first thing we're gonna talk about is how to lock your phones, shut down all the work apps. Like, is it realistic for somebody starting out a company to be able to even do that? Is it vital for that? Like, where does it fall on the
spectrum? I think it depends on what their job is. Like, if you are, let's say, the, running, the back-end infrastructure for your company, you may need to be able to get, like, a real-time notification that...
that's not the woman we want to delete.
Yeah, that shit's falling down. But maybe you could set it up on, like, PagerDuty or something to text you, actually. The thing is, like, you don't actually need to check your email from your phone, because you can actually... I'm on my email at night. I check it every hour probably. I just do it from my computer, so I'm not like standing there hunched over my phone like a fucking addict. And so it just like you want to be present in your life, right? You're gonna have you got a family. You want to be there with your family. You can still at 8 p.m. check your email and do email for an hour or whatever. I'm still on Twitter. I just use Twitter from my computer. When I intentionally want to, not like every 5 seconds that I'm like have a break from any pausing conversation, or and I think that's important. It's like it's actually not taking away from things. There's no message that I need to get that if I respond within 3 hours instead of within 5 minutes, it's going to be the end of the world. And I think that's mostly true for most people. And I actually have like if you really need to get a hold of me, just text me.
Yeah, recently we brought my wife's phone to the Apple Store just down the street from here, and they had it for like a day. And I asked her at the end, I was just like, how did it feel like you didn't have a phone? Like, how was it? She's like, it's great. It's totally liberating. And we've been so, like, we've just been put on this drip for the last, I got a Palm Trio as my first smartphone. It was like in 2005 or 2006. And it's like, so that's almost 15 years since like people probably had it before then. That's when I started working. But like, it's just like we've been conditioned to like always check and we're part of, in some ways, like we're part of this problem. Like we've created this problem, and it's interesting that now the tech people are the sort of the ones that are like realizing like, shoot, I've got to curb this, and you're about to have your first child. I think about it with kids all the time. Like, freak out. One, I don't want my kids, like when I'm supposed to be with them, like I'm like on my phone. It's just like it sucks. It's embarrassing. Yeah. They don't say anything. They're too young to say anything, but like they see it. And then it's like, what is that going to manifest into? Like, we should be talking and being human beings. So,
yeah, I think it's a barrier to connecting more deeply with other people around you.
So you talk about exercise and diet, alcohol. You don't drink alcohol anymore.
Oh yeah, I quit drinking alcohol.
Why is that?
I drank a lot. I was trying to calculate how many drinks I've had in my life. It's probably like 10,000.
So you're great at drinking.
Yeah, I tested all the different
the Malcolm
pathways.
Gladwell, how to become great at drinking.
But I really realized, I mean, one of the things I've done for myself, which was very valuable for me, and I think maybe for some of you, is I was always like, the thing that made me an entrepreneur, or maybe want to be an entrepreneur, is I'm like an Enneagram type 7 personality. That's like the enthusiast. I get really excited about things, and I love new experiences and new ideas, and I'm always chasing new stuff. And I realized that the flip side of that is I would always try to run away from the negative, or what I would classify as negative. Most people experience as negative emotions and experiences. And so things like anxiety over where my startup was going, or frustration or sadness, I would try to escape from those emotions. And so spent a lot of time escaping in various different ways, but alcohol was like a primary one of them. When I realized that earlier this year, I was like, I should, I've kind of done that over and over again, and I wanted to really be more comfortable fully feeling the full range of feelings, and so decided to quit drinking for good. So it's been 126 days now, and it's working for me.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Do you feel like you're missing out? Like you can't go to Napa anymore? You can't do the whole look really smart when you swish a drink, like a liquid around in a glass? Do you miss that at all? Actually,
my brother did get a micro crush program, like our own wine bottle, shortly after. So, I did miss out on that. But actually, ultimately, I haven't felt very much like I'm missing much. I feel like I drank my share, to be honest.
Therapy.
Yeah,
that's another one. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's a lot of stigma around therapy, or there used to be. I think it's kind of coming off a little bit, but I think that generally people have always thought about therapy as something that you should do if you are broken in some way or have some problem. People think about. I think a lot of the mental health system. People think about it like similar to medical conditions, where it's like a binary. You either have it or don't. And I think therapy is something that's like pretty good for well, first of all, people are like a gradient of mental wellness, and I think it's something that's really good for you, even if you think you're good, because effectively you're having someone else that you can talk to about whatever your problems are. And that process is very cathartic. I've learned a lot for myself just about being in touch with my emotions and being able to sit with them from therapy. And really, it took me being super stressed out. This was actually not this startup, but the last iteration, so 6 years ago, to actually invest in it for myself, because I was at a breaking point.
I've heard you talk about that you're committed to feeling all of your emotions. What does that mean?
Yeah, so human beings have a bunch of emotions, right? There's 5 big ones: joy, sadness, fear, anger, and excitement. And it's like Inside Out. You guys ever see that movie? So yeah, and they're you don't control if you have them. They exist. They're caused by parts of your brain, like your amygdala and the hormones in your body, and you're going to experience these feelings whether you like it or not, or whether you understand it or not. In most professional environments and workplaces, you will be encouraged or socialized to suppress the ones that you don't think that people say are not appropriate for the workplace, right? So that might be fear, if you have anxiety over something, or it might be anger. Oftentimes, if you'll be socialized a certain way depending on your gender, right? So if you're a woman, showing sadness in the workplace or anger, showing anger in the workplace is like not acceptable. Oftentimes, if you're a man, like showing sadness might be, you build a mental model that you'll be punished if you do that. But regardless, people have all these emotions, and so. Part of what I want to do with Atrium and what I really believe is a healthy company culture is building an environment that's safe for people to bring their whole selves to work, including all their emotions. Because your emotions are actually a signal. They're like a data point. For example, if you feel frustration about, let's say, Derek, you work with me and you're presenting a plan and I'm like feeling frustrated. In the normal work environment, in today's modern society, I might say, "Oh, that's about me, that frustration. I should just shut that down because it's not professional, and I want to hide it." And then it will fester. I'll be pissed. I might think you're incompetent, but secretly in my head, and then do nothing about it. In the I'm in touch with my emotions world, I can say, "Hey, I just want to call out right now. I feel frustrated."
I think you might be incompetent.
No. Yeah, I think you want to talk about your emotions in a nonviolent way, right? So I want to say, "Hey, I'm frustrated right now."
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but it might be because just talking out loud, actually, I think we haven't aligned on the goals for this project, and you're going down path A, and I actually think that maybe I really want to go down path B, and I'm worried that if we execute this plan, my needs are not going to be met. And I just want to talk about that and see how that lands with you, right? So that's a way. My anxiety or my frustration in that moment is actually a signal that something's wrong with that plan, or from my perspective, right? And if I don't talk about it, if I suppress that signal, then I'm actually throwing out valuable data. And so the key for me is how can I build a culture and a workspace where people feel safe expressing that? Because it's easy to do if you're the CEO. It's not so easy to do if you're just someone on the Atrium team, right? So it's up to me and the leadership of the company, I think, to really build that environment.
And do you feel like doing in expressing that, it then sort of relieves it, and you're able to move forward? Has that changed?
Yeah, absolutely. So think about how you've expressed and experienced your emotions in your life. There's probably some time when you were very sad and you cried about it, and then afterwards you felt better. Or you were super pissed and you went outside and you screamed about it, or you punched a wall or something like that, and then you felt better afterwards. Human beings are meant to clear emotions and express them, and then be okay and go back to, move towards solution and problem solving, or releasing those feelings. But instead, we create these systems where we don't ever release them, and then they become a mood, and then eventually you're just the angry guy at the office.
You talked about this a little bit in the beginning, and you've tweeted a lot about it, and I think you have a pretty unique position on it. But it's basically this idea of not having stress or anxiety or sadness over what you can't control. And as I've been thinking about this a lot over the last couple weeks, having thought about what you've been saying, and trying to understand the lines between where does your control start and where does it stop? So is it do you count family and coworkers, friends in there? Do you I may have chosen to go to X school that led down this path. Some of it's are my choices that then lead to things that are out of my control, So I'm trying, where do you see those lines of choice and not?
Yeah, so you don't actually have control over anything that happens. And actually, you don't even have control over the emotions that you have experiencing them. So, you are going to feel anxiety or sadness or anger over events that happen. You don't really have control over those events. And so I think the important learning for me has been to release my expectations of control, the illusion that I have of control, and be just accepting of the things that happen. I can have preferences for how I want to change those things or how I want to act in response to those things. I do have those preferences, right? Like, so when, I don't know, bad things happen at Atrium, I want to correct them and try my best to improve. But I don't have control over, whether they happen in the beginning or not. And so, releasing my need for control around those circumstances has really helped me.
I just don't. I'm like struggling to figure out like how to do that, how to like physically do it. Yeah. Like my 10-year-old, who's a really great kid, but like he does something really dumb. Yeah. Like it's hard for me not, and like I'm sure people with teenagers are like, oh, dude, you have no clue what's coming at you in about 5 or 6 years, and I don't, and I try not to think about it because it makes me feel sad, which I'm trying to be happy, and so, but like. Just like physically, like, so one of these things happen, or someone you love does something really terrible, maybe to you, maybe to someone else, or to themselves, and it's like, how do I, like, and I have no control over it, but I still have these feelings that then will affect me for the rest of the week, or the month, or the year, and it's like, how do I?
Yeah, so what has helped me is just a simple reframing. This is one that really helped me, which is just like approaching everything, every circumstance that the universe delivers to me and asking the question, what can I learn from this? Like, what is the universe teaching me at this moment? And so, one example for that you could say I have control over, but maybe I didn't after I started the company. Atrium is we're a business where we have a bunch of legal team members. It's a very high headcount business, more than like a normal enterprise software, SaaS software company or something like that. And so in the beginning, we grew our team from like 0 to 80 people in the first year, and it was very stressful. It was very stressful because you have a bunch of people who have never worked together before, from different cultures, legal, engineering, product, sales. And we didn't have very good internal management at the time, and so I was stressed out, and I was like kicking myself and saying like, why did I choose to start a company with such high headcount when I could have just made a nice like SaaS software company, and it would have been all easy. And what I did eventually was I reframed that question. I was like, what is the universe delivering to me by having this high headcount company, right? And what can I learn from this? And what I learned was I realized like, hey, this is an opportunity to create a culture that touches more people. This is an opportunity to practice my leadership skills at in an order of magnitude that's like much higher than I would have at that like SaaS software company. And when I started approaching everything in my life with like, what can I be, what can the universe teach me from this, and what am I learning from it? Everything got way better, even though they were the same things. And there's like many worse things actually that's happened to me in the last year that I've been able to reframe in a very positive way.
Is the universe always teaching, or is the universe sometimes like just need a good laugh?
I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for the universe, but I think all I can say is like, if you frame your own approach and assume it's a teacher and not just a random torturer, then you're going to feel a lot better about it.
I think one thing that I've learned from you is that this idea that most of the things that cause these problems in our lives are not actually, maybe it's just my life, but like they're things you put on yourself, and or expectations that the world puts on you or something. Yeah. I shared something with you that was bothering me, and you said, well, it directly involves someone I care about. And you said, well, have you talked to that person about it? And I said, do they think that? Do they feel that way? I said, well, no, probably not. And you're like, well, have you asked them? So I said, no, I hadn't. So I did. And, I saw you in Vancouver on Thursday, and so on Friday when I got home, I talked to my wife. I said, hey, like, this is something that's bothering me. And I was like, does it bother you? She's like, no, I could care less. And here is this whole time, you put these expectations on yourself of like, I'm supposed to be doing this thing because other external thing, but actually it's me doing it to myself. I'm not successful enough. I'm not good enough person. I'm not, this or this or this, whatever these things. But actually, you should just embrace those things. That's sort of what I'm hearing from you. Like, don't look at the negative. Look at actually what can be learned from it, and sort of embrace it instead of creating conflict around it.
That's amazing. That made my day, actually, Derek. Thank you for sharing that. I think becoming the source of my own approval and accepting myself was the most powerful thing I ever did for myself.
Yeah, don't torture yourself over the things you don't control. It's a great thought. I would love. People are like, I thought we were going to hear about startups. You got a philosophy degree in college, and I wonder if this was the plan all along. That does this stuff you've been doing? You did it on Snapchat, but it's gone to a new level when you switched over. And I wonder, was this the plan? I'm going to just build companies so I get a little bit of an audience, and then I'm going to start. The philosopher in me is going to come out because it's coming out pretty strong.
Yeah, that was the plan all along. I was like, I was just going to create this whole wave of people watching other people play video games.
Kiko thing, this Justin TV thing, and then it'll turn into. So you start out as a founder. There's a few more founders in there, and then you go to become an investor. You become a partner at YC, which that's a large subset of people in Silicon Valley and technology would probably say is the greatest job of all time, who probably don't know anything about it. And then you leave YC and you become a founder again. And so this doesn't seem like the easiest path. I wonder, what was your thought process doing that, having hustled and sweat and, done the founder thing, kind of what seemed like a much better situation, easier situation, and then diving right back in. Why would you do that?
Yeah, when I was investing, at first when I got, so when I stopped starting the startups, I was so burned out and I had so much brain damage. I was like, I'll never do that again. And then I joined YC and I was, it's just something to do. And at first I didn't know if I had any skills at all, which I know sounds weird, but when you're starting a startup, you often feel like you usually feel like you're failing. That's the default feeling, because you're either you're either actually failing, and then you feel like you're failing, and it's justified, or you are succeeding, but you're thrust in these greater and greater circumstances of things that to jobs that you haven't done before and you haven't prepared for, and you feel like you're failing at them. And so when I joined YC, I didn't think I had any skills. And then I learned, actually, I do have some things to teach people about early stage startups. And so that was good for about a year. I kind of learned, I am valuable here. I can help people. But then it was kind of like just turning a crank over and over again, like being a college professor. It's like, get the batch in, they do 3 months, and then goodbye. And then, help them raise money or whatever. They're off their races. And then the next batch comes in, same thing, right? So I just felt like I wasn't learning anything anymore, actually. And I decided to start another company because I felt that it would be the way to maximize my own personal learnings and self-growth, which turns out it was, even though it was, very tough.
And so you've talked about in the past why you should or shouldn't join a startup. And the 3 things you've talked about is that you should join a startup if you want access to a job you're unqualified for, if you want potentially a good gateway to start a company if you're not the founder, and then this idea of maximizing your speed of learning. And how if I'm sitting here or if I'm listening to this on YouTube or something, how do I find that thing to maximize my speed of learning? How do I? It seems very clear. It makes sense what you're saying, but if I'm just some random person trying to find my career path, how do I even do that? Where do I start looking for that?
You mean what kind of startups to join?
Yeah, or just even if it's not just a job. I want to join something. I'm a growth-minded person, so how do I find the place where I can grow the most?
Yeah, well, I do think startups are a great vehicle for that because, oftentimes the only people, the people who are willing to join an early stage startup are, vastly underqualified for the positions that they're hiring for. And you're going to be thrust in that position where you have to you have responsibility, you have to figure it out, for better or for worse. And you're probably going to fail a lot and it's going to be very painful. But you will have that opportunity to learn. And I think that's the real reason to join a startup. If you're joining to maximize your economics or something like that, I think really I would just go work at one of the FANG companies,
Which companies?
Go work at Facebook or Google.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so reasons not to join a startup: money, if you want a career path, or if you're looking for a good manager.
Right. Yeah, exactly. If you're looking for a good manager, definitely don't join a startup.
Justin Kahn, CEO, co-founder of Atrium, Twitch, many, many other things. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.